Okay.
Where did he come from? We're out of here.
Warning.
How come I know so? What the hell is going on around here? Who are you people?
Do you realize what the ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
Houston, this is Discovery, and we still have the alien spacecraft under observance.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences will advantage. We're facing an alien threat from outside this world.
If anything should happen to me, you must go to God. You must say these words. Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Please repeat that.
Is full of stars.
The prisoner wishes to say a word.
From sea to sea, from planet to planet, and star to shining star, from out of the night and into the light. Your frequency is ascending. With your host, Sean David.
From sea to sea, from planet to planet, and star to shining star, from out of the night and into the light, from the pyramids of Giza to the pyramids on Mars, from the dark side of the street to the dark side of the moon. So an interesting program today. There's been a great deal of flack, a great deal of controversy, all kinds of Facebook flabber. I'm not sure what you would actually call people yakking back and forth on Facebook and Twitter about my guest today that we're going to bring up at the bottom of the hour. But he is Dr. Colonel Michael Aquino, not Aquino, but Aquino. That's how you properly pronounce his name. And he is a very impressive gentleman in the United States military. He's got a fascinating and esteemed service record, actually. But at the same time, we're talking about a gentleman who is currently or has been a practicing Satanist and has, I believe, was a member of the First Church of Satan with Anton LaVey in San Francisco, and has also been the head of the Temple of Set, which is, of course, a serpent temple of the Egyptian snake god, which doesn't really carry a lot of weight in American society, or maybe it does. I don't know. But a person who has identified himself on the one hand with what we would consider the forces of evil, on the other hand claims that he is simply misunderstood and those forces are misunderstood, and on the third hand has actually been exposing a large amount of, I guess what you would call classified or majorly declassified information about everything from Project Artichoke, Project Rainbow, psychological operations, mind control, Monarch. And the flack that I took for doing this interview, and it's there's been a lot of it, believe me. There's been all kinds of controversy, and I wasn't really aware of Aquino outside of his mentions in, for example, Bill Cooper, who had a book called On a Pale Horse, who has some rather nefarious photos of Aquino. Well, they're all nefarious photos of him. He's classically he goes along the sort of classic stereotype of this. He's got the the horned eyebrows. It's very Grandpa Munster in that sort of aspect. He looks like Butch Patrick from the Munsters, but all grown up. He was so cute when he was little. So, but of course he is once again he's an esteemed military command colonel and octave. You're not some slacker when you become a colonel in the military. And sometimes you simply have to go into the shadows, folks, to be able to pull out information. Now, I am not condoning this man's agenda. I am not agreeing with anything particularly that he says or represents. This is as a radio host and journalist who is somebody that goes into the darkness. Darkness is like Area 51. Darkness is like Super Soldier Program. Darkness is like the greatest darkness on earth right now, Monsanto. Darkness is like the Federal Reserve or Goldman Sachs or whatever. You want to interview people inside these organizations who, for whatever reason, for guilt or maybe just to save their own souls at some point, you bring these people out to give you the truth and the information because they've been in that darkness. They've been in those shadows. Another thing too is that, let me just give you some interesting background in this stuff, is I've known a lot of people who belong to covens. I've known people who are witches, as an example, or I think they call them weaches today. Weaches who belong to covens. The weaches of the biatches. When you're in the, I guess you would call, New Age, New Thought philosophical movement, you meet everybody from all the different rounds of the spectrum, and it's interesting and fascinating to me that again, the forces of light, for example, seem to be diffused. They seem to be like a white light through a prism. They spread into a bunch of different multicolors, and in this process of things that you learn, you meet people from different religions, you meet people from different backgrounds. I've traveled and lived all over the world, so you begin to understand other people's cultures. You also understand that one culture or religion or philosophy's savior or messiah is another's antichrist, as an example. When you get close to the Native American people, or as I have with the Ojibwa and the Hopi and the Navajo and the Nez Perce and the Chumash and all these various Indians. I mean, they look at our pantheon of gods, our angels, if you will, our Michael and our Gabriel and whatever, as demons. Because the white man, we were the devil to them. I mean, we came in and we wiped out their culture. We wiped out their culture, their race, their entire civilization. We poisoned them. We gave them diseases. We gave them blankets with polio. It's crazy and that was just the Americans. That was the English in North America. And if you then look at what the Spanish did to South America with Cortez and Eduardo and Francisco Pizarro, I mean, they wiped out the Incan Empire, the entire empire, with 130 guys with horses and chainmail and armor. As an example, they killed. Matter of fact, the Pizarros, I think 30 of them killed like 5,000 Incan warriors with their horses in an afternoon, to give you an idea. So when you're dealing with the concepts of what we consider to be good and evil, you also have to understand that people that identify with the darkness or identify with evil are really reinforcing that good and angelic forces, in fact, exist. And one of the most interesting, a few of the interviews that I've had and a few of my experiences that had to do with when I was in high school. And again, I had a very interesting family. As I said, my Jewish stepfather was very wealthy, but he was very interested in politics and world events. And so we traveled a great deal, and we had a lot of people over to our house, and he sponsored dinners for, like I said, people like Ayn Rand and Eldridge Cleaver and Dr. Ernesto Krebs, and many, many people used to come stay at our home. We had a kind of a big guest area. And so let me give you a couple of interesting insights into this. There was a fantastic gentleman who died just recently. It was very tragic. Well, he was just an older man, but his name was Alan Stang. And Alan Stang was a roving reporter and dashing journalist for American Opinion magazine. And in those days, American Opinion magazine was a publication of the John Birch Society, if anybody remembers them from back in the 60s. By the way, everything the John Birch Society said was going to happen to our civilization was right. The Birch Society never said communism was the threat. They always said the New World Order was going to use the United States government as its beastie boy, if you will, to enforce the New World Order, and that the United States military would be and is now being used as the club for the enforcement of that New World Order. And as I've pointed out over and over and over again, these urban wars, these guerrilla urban conflicts that have taken place in Afghanistan and Iraq, which are not traditional wars. They are not wars where a military goes in, has an objective, wins the war, defeats an enemy, and leaves. These are nation-building exercises. These are going in and suppressing civilian populations. When was the last time we fought an actual army? Last time we fought an actual army was probably March of 2003, and when we defeated the Iraqi national, basically, Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army, which, strange enough, if you remember, was something like the fourth largest in the world at that time, and we beat them in less than 6 weeks. We had Saddam Hussein in custody. I'm telling you this as a fact. We had Saddam Hussein in custody within 2 weeks of our starting that war. By at least the first week of April of 2003, Saddam Hussein was in custody and was being beaten up and interrogated by people that I met who said they were there, who gave me eyewitness testimony that this was the kind of thing that was going on. They pretended not to have him so they could storm around the country, kill his 2 kids, Uday and Qusay, loot the money system, change the Constitution, get them into the Rothschild-controlled banking system, and basically steal all the stuff at the museums. There were certain power spots in Iraq that had to do with the Sumerians, who apparently come from the star system of Aldebaran, but that's a whole other story. As to power places there, we had to lock up, or as Dick Cheney said, when you control Mesopotamia, you control all of Asia Minor for the next 100 years, which is another reason why we stayed. So George Bush essentially stopped becoming president of the United States about 2003, and Dick Cheney just, shoved him aside, shoved him in the mud, really, and just said, this is how this is going to be, and just took over the entire conflict. Now, when you look at this and the military being used to enforce the New World Order, I kept telling people that these armies that are suppressing these civilian populations, all this military equipment and all this training is going to come home, and eventually it's going to be used on us. And now we're in that particular period of time. Now, my awareness of Colonel Aquino came with my reading Bill Cooper's book, On a Pale Horse. Not a great book, sort of revolutionary in a number of ways, because Cooper made a lot of claims, some of which were true, some of which were not. I knew Bill Cooper personally. He was not a real pleasant guy. Actually, he had a really severe drinking problem, and he was a very violent personality. And he eventually broke up his relationship with John Lear because he kind of got an inflated God complex, if you will. He began to just kind of make up a lot of stuff that were theorized, that he then said, well, I saw them in the government files when I worked for the government, et cetera, et cetera. Neither here nor there. But he talked about Michael Aquino in that book and the fact that he was a very highly placed and fairly visible, I might add. He's never made a big secret about it, but that he was a practicing Satanist who operated in the United States military. Now, we've become a lot more tolerant of these people, of witches, for example. We now apparently accept Wicca as a religion. For example, Wicca, they didn't want to call it witchcraft anymore. So they all got together, and Wicca, actually, at a big conference, they decided to call it something different. And it stands for the World International Covens. There's another C in there someplace, but it's like the World International Coven Convention of America. That's what it was. The World International Coven Convention of America became Wicca. So it actually stands for that. And now we accept Wiccans, we accept witches. These are people who, again, in the Bible, you were told to hit with rocks until they were dead. The same with homosexuals. You were told to hit them with rocks until they were dead. These were punishable by death biblically. Which just goes to show that a lot of cultures, we, like the Christian culture, Islam, other cultures, we have religions, we just don't follow them. We just don't follow a lot of the crazy stuff in them. Now, when it was made a big deal about Aquino and his religious proclivities, if you will, what exactly was the military supposed to do? The military said, well, we're supposed to be an organization that fights for religious freedom. It is in the Constitution. And as long as he is doing his job, and as long as he is doing what we tell him to do, and as long as he maintains that he's a good American or Vespuccian or whatever you want to call it, unionist, I guess, a good corporate slave for the government of the corporation that we call the United States of America, we're fine with it. And my conjecture on this is, and look, maybe I'll take some heat from this. I'm all for veterans. I'm all for people that have served in the military. Good for you. Great. all wonderful. We stand behind your service and your sacrifice, et cetera, et cetera. And again, when was the last time the military was actually defending the United States of America? I think the last time that actually happened was probably, well, we don't want to defend the border against Mexico, so that's not happening. So apparently only the Texas and Arizona National Guards are the only ones actually defending the land that we call America. And Barack Obama has seen to it that none of that is going to happen. So, I don't know. When was the last good war? Was Vietnam good? I suppose. We did defend South Vietnam for a period of time. They did extend the war when they could have won it at any time. I think the crime of that war was not the fact that we were protecting South Vietnam, but the fact that we refused to win the conflict and go into North Vietnam and basically just blow it to hell and grab those people by the scruff of the necks and make them sign their little X and then kick them in the ass back to the hole that used to be their country, and then tell the Chinese to back off. Korea was the exact same way. You had great American heroes like Douglas MacArthur who said, this is not what the military's for. You're supposed to achieve military goals, win wars, and get out. And once again, we had the endless war concept because the bankers wanted it that way. So the challenge becomes here is that when you're looking at the military and you're looking at influences of evil, isn't the philosophy of evil all about evil is live spelled backwards, devil is lived spelled backwards? Isn't the entire philosophy about killing people and suppressing people and controlling people? Isn't that really a satanic philosophy? And does it go beyond everybody that our flag is full of pentagrams, as an example, all little stars that, our flag, which has, red stripes for blood and, white stripes for the sheep that are moving to the slaughter, a blue field that's now captured all of the states and little pentagram stars, that the very building of the Pentagon, the very building of the Pentagon is a gigantic inverted black magic pentagram. And the Pentagon, actually, the point of the Pentagon faces south, which is an inverted pentagram. And one would conjecture what exactly the kind of energy that building actually generates. There's a reason why Eisenhower warned us that the military-industrial complex was so dangerous. Never in the history of man have we had an organization like this that has been sucking off us to supposedly defend us from what exactly? We had the Cold War, but it turns out that the Russians were a gigantic paper tiger that we created. The Chinese are turning into the same thing. So in the course of this, when Alan Stang came to my parents' house, we actually went up and interviewed Anton LaVey, who was I was in like 8th grade, I think it was. And, my mother just let me do all kinds of crazy things. I was like 14 and she let me drive the car to my girlfriend's house and she didn't think anything of it because I was a very, very precocious and, very genius kind of kid. So, when you're tested with like an IQ of like 147, you get a, you get a pass on a lot of things. So we went to Anton LaVey's house and, my mother was like, well, it's not going to wash his brain away. He studies enough of the Bible. He knows what's what. And I was there taking pictures of Anton LaVey and all this. Anyway, after this, we are bringing up Colonel Dr. Michael Aquino. And hang on, it's going to be a hell of a ride. It's Strange Universe, and we just work here. We'll be back after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out.
Not me.
Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
2014 will be an amazing year of consciousness, revelation, and ascension for us all. Hi, this is Megan Bell. We at Pyridine are here to help you achieve all the goals that you have set for yourself and achieve the happiness and prosperity that you so richly deserve. That is why we are announcing a historic sale on all of our amazing jewelry, specifically the revolutionary Super Receptor Medallion. At Pyridine, we fine-tune the device to your personal frequency, choosing from 24 precious gemstones to bring your body into maximum harmony. Invented by my late contactee father, Dr. Fred Bell, this incredible ET technology is reputed to raise our vibrations, protecting and defending our bodies from the sea of EMF and radiation that we now swim in every day, activating your energy to its ultimate potential. See how this remarkable technology can help you, now at sale prices that you cannot afford to miss. Pyridine.com. Technology from the future for all of us.
A whole new world of power, health and awareness is only a click away. Check out the remarkable devices and systems at Pyridine.com. That's Pyradyne.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958. And Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world.
An epic story spanning 40 years in the life of Dr. Ted Humphrey and his involvement with time travel, Area 51,
the Dawson Missile,
the Montauk Project,
the Shadow Government,
and Dr. Humphrey's meteoric rise to become head of an all-powerful global organization engaged in a desperate race against time to save our world. At 17, Ted's father, a brilliant government scientist, disappears, and Ted makes it his life's mission to discover his father's fate. This leads to him being drafted into beyond top-secret projects, making the most valuable machine ever built, a device that can move through space and time. As time tech is developed, Ted is taken inside an elite, clandestine group of men dedicated to hiding a deadly truth that forces from beyond the stars could lead to Earth's destruction. Ted gets guidance from people further down and outside the time stream, never knowing who he can trust, while still seeking to solve his father's disappearance. Sands of Time is truly remarkable, a rare look behind the curtain of the black world of super technology, and shows us, once again, that all we have come to accept as reality is wrong.
And now, for the very first time, Sands of Time Volume 1 is now available in paperback for only $25. Read the book that Amazon ranked 5 stars. Also in ebook and dynamic voice spoken word audio, all at Amazon or StrangeUniverseRadio.com.
Read this book and never be the same. This is JP from Journeys with JP. You're listening to Revolution Radio. And now back to Sean David Morton with Strange Universe.
Ah, there we go. Let's grab some music, why don't we? Sean, which thing did you want first here?
I gave it all the Cooper thing.
Yeah, okay, hold on. I remember.
Really? Are we live now? Is this us being idiots in front of millions of people?
No, this is me being an idiot in front of millions of people. You're not an idiot, Sean.
Okay, no, I'm the idiot. I'm the idiot. It's just stupid. Do I have to play this from my side?
Whoever gets there first.
Whoever gets there first, okay? So the stuff I gave you, that was all 1, 2, and 3, huh?
I know, but I had to reboot things. I can't right now.
Never mind. Jesus. Hey, welcome to Professional Internet Radio, everybody. There's one person helping another person who helps another person who then, and everybody falls off a cliff. After commencing his military career as a cadet colonel of the Santa Barbara High School Junior ROTC in 1964, Michael Aquino was commissioned in the regular Army as a senior ROTC distinguished military graduate of the University of California. He went to Cal Berkeley in 1968. After a year with the 117th Cavalry 82nd Airborne Division, he completed the PSYOPS officer course at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare School, in which he was among selected students. Cross-trained with the concurrent Special Forces officer course. During 69-70, he was assigned to the 6th PSYOP Battalion, 4th Group, Vietnam, as an HA command and control team leader who's responsible for both tactical HP teams and audio-visual teams in the Civil Operations of Revolutionary Support Corps program, and flew numerous PSYOP air support missions throughout 3rd Corps Tactical Zone with both the U.S. Air Force and Army Aviation. After commencing his military career as cadet colonel, and he was in the 306th, whose members ranged from eccentric Hollywood personalities to dour LAPD officers. He oversaw highly classified basic PSYOP studies for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, PSYOP support for the training units, for Special Forces, and use of the 306th Atmospheric World War II era bunkers for space combat scenes in the original Battlestar Galactica TV series. So he's been involved in Hollywood and popular entertainment. In 1976, he was selected for the Foreign Area Officer Career Program, completed the qualification at the Special Warfare Center and Central Intelligence Command Agency during the next 3 years, and participated in NATO Reforger exercises as a Western European specialist. In 1976, he also completed the remaining course requirements for Special Forces and was awarded that tab upon its creation in 1984. From 1979 to 81, he served as the FA team leader for Headquarters 7th PSYOP Group in San Francisco, during which time he and the group commander collaborated on the predecessor concept paper to his latest book called Mind War. Returning to active duty in 1981, he was transferred to Civil Affairs Branch, completed its advanced course at the Special Warfare Center as the distinguished graduate, and received the rare primary skill identifier of Politico-Military Affairs Officer, 48th grade. In his capacity, he was sent to the State Department Foreign Service Institute and the Defense Intelligence Agency for attaché qualification, completed the Military Intelligence Officer Advanced course at Fort Huachuca, and in 1986 was reassigned to Military Intelligence Branch. In 86 and 87, he was the sole USAR officer selected to attend the Industrial College of, Industrial College of the National Defense University. And during that year, he worked with the U.S. Information Agency representative at the National War College on the PSYOP ethics paper, which is also a predecessor to his book, Mind War. And in 1990, as one of the Army's first officers to be certified in Joint Space Intelligence by the U.S. Air Force, he was assigned to J2 HQ U.S. Space Command, where in Section X, out of the Cheyenne Mountain NORAD complex, he was involved with those files until he retired from the active USAR in 1994. Now, since the Army had waited until the exact date of his final USA retirement in 2006 to create the PSYOP branch, it graciously transferred him posthumously to the Green and Gray in 2011, and he's retained his original affiliation with the 1st Special Forces Regiment out of respect for that unique honor. His American decorations include the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, Air Medal, 3 Army Commendation Medals, 2 Army Reserve Achievement Medals, Parachutist Badge, Special Forces Tab, and United States Air Force Space and Missile Badge. Now, I'm hoping we have him on the phone. Dr. Colonel Aquino, are you there?
I am here, Sean. That was quite an introduction.
Well, thank you, sir. It's I've just wanted to give your military service all that it deserved. First off, we're going to talk about your book, Mind War, if you don't mind. Now, you're saying that your book, Mind War, has a lot to do with the papers that you actually worked on when you were actually in the military. Is this based on what you would consider classified or recently declassified information about psychological warfare?
Well, the interesting thing about PSYOP, or psychological operations, is that a lot of it does not actually involve classified information because, strangely enough, it's so esoteric that the military and the government tends not to think in those terms when it's dealing with it. So it occupies a certain twilight zone, you might say, in this area, which actually makes it very convenient if you're working in it, because if you are stuck working within classified information, it's a very difficult process to be able to decide what you can say and what you can't. So I actually had a good deal of freedom of action here when I was putting together the Mind War book. And, of course, before that, the papers and the years of research that went into this.
Does anybody make you submit your manuscript before you publish it for them to, I don't know, cleanse it or object to it or say, well, you can't print this or that?
No. Again, I didn't need to resort to any classified information to do this, which, as I said, made it a very, very open project for me, which was very pleasant. I've been in military intelligence fields, of course, wrapped up in other areas such as space intelligence that are very highly classified. And there, of course, you have to be very picky about what you say and don't say so that you don't wind up either disappearing or simply going to Leavenworth for a nice long stay there. But PSYOP happens, as I said, to walk between the raindrops in this area, which in the case of this book was very handy for me because I did not want to pull any punches, and I wanted to get the entire message out there, not just for the people in the government for whom this book was written originally, but also for the public in the sovereign United States, where the people are supposedly in charge of this whole operation, to understand this concept and decide how it could be put to use. So that was the genesis of this book.
With what we've got going on now, you had a president who came in, promising all kinds of things about transparency and that the government would be more transparent. There were people who want to name high schools after Barack Obama, and they should probably call them Barack Obama 2008 high schools as opposed to Barack Obama 2015 high schools. But you have a president who's come in who many people believe, and even in the press, and we're talking about both right-wing and left-wing, the most outrageous thing is to hear from things like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the, I guess what you would consider the left wing of the press, saying that this president has created a far greater intelligence apparatus than anything we've ever seen. You, of course, have the revelations of Edward Snowden coming out about the sheer magnitude of the spying that's going on with the American people. I remind people that Richard Nixon was impeached for bugging two apartments, basically, at the Watergate, and Barack Obama has bugged the entire world, and everybody still seems to think he's a hero. He's listening to everybody's mail. So what is it that prompted you to write this book at this particular time?
Well, let me take you all the way back to 1967 when I was an ROTC cadet, and I was interested in a military career. But at the same time, I was not really happy with the idea of killing people and blowing their stuff up. And I learned that at a place called the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center, the Army had a psychological operations function, and it offered initially an extension course, which I could take as an ROTC cadet, and then later a residence course to train PSYOP officers. And the whole idea of this is to win battles and, beyond that, wars, with the power of persuasion, which can range from everything from overt convincing of people of things to what you might call propaganda that is a little bit more devious and sneaky. But this is all stuff that is done out in the open, and it doesn't require the kind of intrusion into people's private business here or overseas that you see in these intelligence breaches that you've been talking about.
I think the greatest propaganda tool the United States has ever used has been MTV. You see it everywhere, perverting every culture, changing everyone into, I don't know, a dark mirrored image of us here in the United States.
Well, that could be.
Yeah.
There's some question as to who actually lost the war in Southeast Asia, because nowadays you can go into Hanoi and visit Burger King and stay in the Hilton and so on.
Sure.
So, what goes around comes around here. But the essence of your question is that I became interested in this field of PSYOP because I don't like the idea of doing harm to other people physically. So the question is, when you have people who have disagreements with other people, how can you resolve these disagreements without it descending into hitting them over the head with a club, so to speak? And that was what has governed my research, which has been increasingly in-depth research throughout the many decades of my involvement in this field. And in it, I have sought to take the original, rather primitive versions of PSYOP far beyond what I would say conventional people assume it to be, which is simple things like newspapers, radio broadcasts, leaflets and loudspeakers, things like that you see in war movies and so on.
So there's a bit of we'll stay on this topic. Let me ask a slight non sequitur here. There's as I was explaining in the first half hour, I got a lot of a great deal of flack thrown at me for having you on the program. And with your involvement in the dark arts, if you will, and if I'm being unfair, please correct me. But you're the founding head of, I think, the Temple of Set, and you've been involved in, I believe, were you ever involved with Anton LaVey and his first Church of Satan, and rather famous for being connected with Satanists? Isn't that your philosophy of nonviolence confuses me a bit? Could you explain it?
Well, you're right on those counts that I was involved with Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan ever since about 1969. Right. And I was one of the founders of the Temple of Set, the successor organization, in 1975. But to understand this, you have to understand that what the Church of Satan was all about had nothing to do with what most people would consider evil or the glorification or worship of evil. It had to do with two other things that, if you think about it, make much more sense. The first, of course, was that in the mid-'60s, there was a good deal of cynicism about the hypocrisy in society, and the Church of Satan socially took a stand against that kind of hypocrisy. It was a mirror, you might say, that held up to society its own lies, its own excuses, its own rationalizations of its misconduct, so that you couldn't, in the Church of Satan, profess to be a good person just by going to church and then go out and be devious and nasty in your daily dealings elsewhere. What you were on one day or in the church was exactly what you were on the outside, and you were expected to be personally responsible for the whole thing. The other was the metaphysical aspect, which once again had nothing to do with good and evil, but had everything to do with what John Milton brought out in Paradise Lost as the question of separateness of the individual consciousness, or in this case Satan, from the universe around it. Who are you, Sean, as an entity? Are you simply part of everything that you see around you, like a mechanism, like an automobile in a garage? Or are you something that stands apart from what you'd call the objective or physical universe, that looks out on it, that sees it in perspective, and that has the discretion to make decisions about what you are going to do in it? Therefore, your consciousness, the thing that is Sean, and I'm not talking about just this physical body that you're in, but the thing that's your soul, is something outside of nature. And that is what you might call the essential or original sin of Set or Satan or or Prometheus or any of these characters in history that have symbolized the human psyche. So the adventure of the Church of Satan was in these two areas. First of all, to kind of put a whoopee cushion down for society in terms of society's own shortcomings, and then secondly, to explore what it is to be a human being and to take responsibility for yourself. And the Temple of Set in 1975 was, you might say, the next level in this, because it took it beyond the iconographic area of simply Judeo-Christianity and took it farther back to the most sophisticated explorations of this that we know about, which go back to ancient Egypt. So that explains, I would say, these two organizations. They have nothing and never did have anything to do with good or evil in terms of advocating evil. In fact, I would call them both extremely virtuous, because they do not enable you to excuse any shortcomings or any bad deeds on your behalf by saying something else made me do it, or the devil made me do it, or this is just because I'm stuck here, and I can't do anything else. No, you take 100% responsibility for everything you say and do, and you're the person at the end of the day who has to look at yourself in the bathroom mirror and say, okay, this is how I think of myself, and this is what I did today, and it's either worthwhile or not.
I always used to wonder if the and this may be dating myself a little while, but do you remember the comedian Flip Wilson?
Sure.
Flip Wilson and Geraldine always used to say, "The devil made me buy this dress," and I always thought, I always used to think of Anton LaVey when that was going on.
Yeah, well,
finish your thought.
Anton was a very smart man. He was a gentleman. He was also a great humorist. He had a wonderful sense of humor.
I met him. I told you we went up. We were at his house actually, and I interviewed him with Alan Stang.
Okay.
In 1973, I think it was, and he had a wall full of death masks, which I thought it was like the Haunted Mansion. He had a wall full of death masks. He had a coffee table that was a headstone. He had and I'm sure you know all this, but it's he had I thought the coolest thing was he had a sliding bookcase. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. He had one of those sliding magician bookcases that went down to his bedroom downstairs. I also thought it was very weird too, because I actually took a look. I didn't go down there, but I actually took a look down the stairs, and he had a huge Russian communist flag actually hanging on his wall in his bedroom, which I thought was a little creepy. And he actually gave us he gave me, I think I still have it. He gave Alan, I think, a hardback, and he gave me a paperback of the Satanic Bible signed by him, which I still have somewhere. But and I did read it, and it's it does say things like, the meek shall not inherit the earth; they shall be trodden under cloven hoof, which made it sound a lot like Scientology, actually. But
please.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm not gonna go so far as to compare it to the Scientologists, but and I think he was a lion tamer, and he was in the circus, and he was a kind of a show hypnotist, and he struck me as somebody who was just putting something together that I'm not so sure he was really serious about it. As far as there was a lot of showmanship involved, and it just seemed very, very carnival-like. Would you agree?
He was
or
very
disagree with that?
lighthearted when he originally put the Church of Satan together, because, as I said, this was in the middle of the Haight-Ashbury period.
Yeah.
And this was sort of what you call the extreme of some of the religious or New Age experimentation that was going on.
I forgot you were going to Berkeley at that time. You were going to Cal, right?
Well, I did some coursework at Cal, but I was actually at an undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara, which is also where I did my graduate work.
All right.
So it was a much more relaxed campus than nervous old Berkeley up here.
Okay.
But in any case, yes, Anton, he created something that turned out to be bigger than he'd originally thought to chew on, because the Church of Satan was begun almost casually as a kind of a lark, a way to have fun and a sort of an ongoing Halloween party every Friday night in San Francisco. So, who would want to go to a regular church and look at a dead body, up on a torture machine behind the altar, when you could go to this one and look at a Playboy centerfold very live on the altar?
Yeah, they had the nude girl on the altar.
Yeah.
They all eat
and
a meal.
Instead of dreary old, sermons and liturgies and things like this, you had monsters and demons that were barking around, and torches and flames and all kinds of wild organ music right out of Universal monster movies from the 1940s. This was a lot of fun.
That's what it looked like to me. It was, and again, I was in 8th or 9th grade, and we were just doing a story on it, so it was just my job to take pictures. But so I didn't want to get off on that entire topic. It's just it was so public, and it seemed to be such a farcical thing at the time, and very theatrical. It was in the Richmond district, and of course the perfect thing to come out of San Francisco. But what's been the exposure of your Mind War book? Who's reading it? And what do you expect to happen as a result of your writing?
I'll bridge this a little bit for you first by telling you that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, what we were doing in the Church of Satan in a kind of an elementary way as its initial period went on, and then later on in the Temple of Set, was exploring the concept and the mystery of the human soul. In other words, the thing that is you. And of course, with that goes the ability to, or I would say the responsibility to take responsibility for your own decisions as to what you do with yourself. So the entire question of ethics became central to this exploration, since you can't rely on 10 Commandments, you can't rely upon religion to sort of set up a moral code for you. You have to understand everything about what you're doing and make decisions about it. And that played, of course, right into the notion in my secular profession of the question of ethics in your behavior in something like the military, because there you're in an area where you are bringing a certain amount of force or pressure to bear upon foreign policy problems or situations. Generally, if diplomacy falls on its ass, then it throws the problem over into the military's lap and says, here, go beat them up with a club until they scream uncle.
Right.
Well, this is a pretty stupid way of settling problems, and if you're supposedly an advanced being with a brain, you can do better than this. And this is what Mind War set out to do. It set out to say, all right, let's examine this whole question of why people can't agree upon things in diplomacy, and why then they just sort of throw their hands up and then start shooting at each other and blowing things up, which of course never solves anything.
We're coming up at our break right here, Colonel, but it's because basically politics is money talking, and war is just politics by other means. So it's and is an extension of that. So it's basically all business and all money all hitting each other over the head. So it's his book is called Mind War. This is I believe it's Dr. Colonel Aquino, yes?
Aquino, yes.
Aquino, I'm sorry. I got all your titles right. And Michael, okay. But we're going to be back to talk to him a little bit more about his book. We're going to talk to him. We've got some questions about, I don't know, everything from the Beatles to the Tavistock Institute to, his past and being involved in so much of this, and maybe how many of these psychological wars and operations are actually being used on the American people. So let me also just mention that our program is being brought to you by Pyridine. That's pyridine.com, Pyradyne, pyridine.com. Tomorrow's technology today. Are we coming up to break? Were you going to play music as we're coming up to the break, Steve? Or are we? You guys have got me completely miffed today.
It's coming. It hasn't kicked in yet.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, Michael. We started this whole thing out where we were all prepared and we had everything all laid down, and then we couldn't connect to the server. So and then we had HQ come in, and I believe they're run by Chaos. The guys that used to always try to get Maxwell Smart in the old TV show. So anyway, one other thing too is we also have a cruise coming up to Alaska. Please check spiritualcruise.com. That's spiritualcruise.com. We got cruises to our fantastic shamanic cruise to Alaska, and another cruise coming up to Mexico in February. So this is Sean David Morton. It's a Strange Universe, and we just work here, and we'll be back in a few beats of your heart.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
trouble.
Come on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Sands of Time, an epic story spanning 40 years in the life of Dr. Ted Humphrey and his involvement with time travel, Area 51,
the Dothan Missile,
the Montauk Project,
the Shadow Government,
and Dr. Humphrey's meteoric rise to become head of an all-powerful global organization engaged in a desperate race against time to save our world. At 17, Ted's father, a brilliant government scientist, disappears, and Ted makes it his life's mission to discover his father's fate. This leads to him being drafted into beyond top-secret projects, making the most valuable machine ever built. A device that can move through space and time. As time tech is developed, Ted is taken inside an elite, clandestine group of men dedicated to hiding a deadly truth that forces from beyond the stars could lead to Earth's destruction. Ted gets guidance from people further down and outside the time stream, never knowing who he can trust, while still seeking to solve his father's disappearance. Sands of Time is truly remarkable. A rare look behind the curtain of the black world of super technology, and shows us, once again, that all we have come to accept as reality is wrong.
And now, for the very first time, Sands of Time Volume 1 is now available in paperback for only $25. Read the book that Amazon ranked 5 stars. Also, in ebook and dynamic voice spoken word audio, all at Amazon or StrangeUniverseRadio.com.
Read this book and never be the same.
A narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a civil majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us. Here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
My name is Megan Bell. My father, Dr. Fred Bell, was one of the greatest scientific minds of this age. He was a prolific writer, inventor, and extraterrestrial contactee. When my father tragically passed away, many thought that his incredible scientific work would be lost forever. But I have picked up the torch and reignited his Promethean flame. We now bring you the all-new Pyridine, based on the powerful fields created by pyramids and hyper-advanced Pleiadian and Andromedan technology. We offer jewelry, pendants, and scalar wave-based pyramid systems that bring protection from all the dangerous, harmful fields and energies that modern civilization bombards us with every day. All this combined with a line of vitamins and nutrient formulas that bring you raised levels of health, awareness, and closer to the ascension frequency of our new age. I joyfully invite you to join us on our website and find out more information for yourself.
A whole new world of power, health, and awareness is only a click away. Check out the remarkable devices and systems at Pyridine.com. That's Pyradyne.
Message to our listeners. Revolution Radio is you. Thanks to your continuous support and participation, Revolution Radio will embark on
its 5th year! Woohoo!
Bigger and better than ever. You, the listeners, have made Revolution Radio what it is. The #1 commercial-free talk radio station on the web with nearly 24 hours of live programming, delivering directly to you the most cutting-edge information available. You, the listeners, have become some of our most popular radio hosts. You, the listeners, offer feedback that molds our programming to appeal to a worldwide audience. You, the listener, provide eyes on the ground, reporting about newsworthy events in your area, and you, the listener, are the lifeblood of this station. We love you, and thank you for being a treasured member of our Revolution Radio family. From all of us to all of you, have a happy and safe holiday season, and let's make this new year a success once again together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world.
This is Lorian Fenton from the Fenton Perspective. You're listening to Revolution Radio. And now we take you back to Strange Universe with your host, Sean David Morton.
And welcome back to Strange Universe Radio. And once again, my guest is Colonel Dr. Michael Aquino. American decorations include the Bronze Star Meritorious Service Medal, Air Medal, 3 Army Commendation Medals, 2 Army Reserve Achievement Medals, Parachutist Badge, Special Forces Tab, and United States Air Force Space and Missile Badge, and also one of the founding members of the First Church of Satan and the Temple of Set. And his latest book is called Mind War. And quite frankly, Michael, when in talking to you, I expected your voice to be heavily reverbed, kind of a and every paragraph accentuated by some kind of diabolical laugh of some kind, sort of a but that hasn't happened yet. So thank you for that.
Well, I'll have to work on the diabolical laugh.
Okay.
Actually,
so
I'm a fairly straightforward person, and when
Yes.
I'm asked questions, I like to give fairly straightforward answers. That was quite a station break, by the way. With that had, I would say, its own share of reverbs in there.
I know it's crazy.
But anyway, what
just-
I'm trying to give you today, as I said, is fairly straightforward information that is all very, very soundly based in conventional science that any university would be quite comfortable with.
Right. Now, you've described your book as unclassified only because a high enough classification for it was never anticipated. Why is that?
Well, once again, we're dealing with something that you could compare with. I'll try not to be overly romantic here, but I mean.
Oh, please. We love overly romantic. Go ahead.
You could compare this a little bit with the Manhattan Project, where you had a bunch of scientists who were working on a theoretical idea that they didn't know what it was going to come out like. And as a result of this, they could have come out with a fizzle, or in 1945, they could have come out with a big bomb, which is what they came out with, or if they had calculated it a bit wrong, they could have exploded the entire Earth's atmosphere and we'd all be toast right now. So even though they considered the Manhattan Project secret, they weren't really sure why it should be that way. And when we're dealing with Mind War, we're dealing with the mysteries and the uncharted territory of human consciousness and exactly what we call the architecture of thought is involved with. These are the procedures that take place in your body and brain that actually go into the construction of your perspective on reality, your ideas, and just how you think. And if you pause and consider this for a moment, this is a tremendously powerful weapon, if you will, to interact with other people, and it can be a tremendous force for good if this is done ethically and with an idea of reducing human suffering and warfare, or what we call phys war, physical war. Or if it is misused, it can take you in the direction of 1984 and thought control. So the entire thrust of my research into Mind War and the intense discussion of ethics that takes place in the book is all designed to push this in the direction of its ethical use. What Plato was thinking about when he insisted in the Republic that mankind has at its base an inherent desire for the good with a capital G, and that it is only smaller pressures in the imperfections of daily life that manifests itself in violence and harm to others. So Mind War, the book, and Mind War, the principle, is a bet that Plato was right, that when these things are laid out and argued sensibly to the readers of the book, the public, and also the people in the government and the various agencies and departments who are looking at this thing, that they will not misuse it, that they will move it in the direction of reducing the hurt that the world is feeling and the suffering that it's going through. That's the big bet here.
So you're saying that these psychological operations and these psychological warfare programs are basically proposing to reduce or eliminate bloodshed and destruction of traditional war by what? Removing antagonism and hate from the minds of the humans involved? I mean, is that even possible?
Well, that's something of a simplification, but I'll break it down for you a little bit here. Let's talk about a term, and these are terms that you aren't going to see elsewhere because I'm basically releasing these things out from behind the black doors, as it were, for the first time here. But we're talking about thought architecture, which is the machinery by which your thoughts are constructed, the things that go on in your head all the time. Now, you have two basic kinds of this. There's subconscious thinking, and then there's conscious thinking. And subconscious we'll come back to in a minute in more detail, but subconscious thinking actually, what percentage of your thoughts would you guess it takes up statistically, as a result of university research into this?
My thoughts particularly, I don't know, what, the thoughts of hating somebody or getting all worked up over
all your
civilization?
subconscious thoughts. I'll take the suspense away. 95% of your thinking takes place at the subconscious level, and what you are thinking right now when you're talking with me is at the conscious level, and that is only about 5% of the way your brain is processing thought.
All right.
Now, what happens in human conflict is that people try to resolve issues at the conscious level by argument or negotiation or discussion. And guess what happens? They're working with that 5%, and that 5% is very superficial next to the 95%, which involves what's called pattern thinking. Pattern thinking means that at the subconscious level, we have pictures of reality and what is good and what is bad, and we fit everything into those patterns. An example, a very simple example, might be that when you go outside every day and you see red, white, or red, yellow, and green stoplights, you don't stop to reason these things out every time you see them. You're already conditioned into understanding that if you don't stop at a red light, you're going to be hit by a car. If green means it's probably safe to go, and so on. But this is all a pattern that you've assimilated into your subconscious so that you don't have to pay that much attention to it. And another example that I often give to people has to do with stage magic. I'm a magician, member of the Hollywood Magic Castle, so of course I have some familiarity in this, as did Anton LaVey, for that matter, who was also a stage magician. But what stage magicians do to you when they are performing magic is to suggest different patterns of reality to you, and then to do things within those patterns of reality that you would think to be impossible. So these are small artificial messings, you might say, with your reality patterns, which is why when you see a really well-done magical performance in front of you,
like 9/11.
Let's not go there just yet.
Okay, good. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Biggest magic trick ever, but go ahead.
But in any case, we're dealing here then with all of the mechanisms in your body that have to do with the construction of the subconscious pattern thinking. And there are a number of these, which I outline in the book. And these are controlled by what we refer to in the industry or the business as psy-controls or psychons. Now, these deal with two levels of this, which are liminal, which is right at the surface level, which deal with your conscious perceptions, and also subliminal, which deal with your subconsciousness. Now, I'll give you a quick historical tour here, because one of the big screw-ups at this historically, which you might or might not want to get around to asking me about, had to do with some of those notorious experiments done by the CIA and so on, and NSA, that had to do with MK Delta and MK Ultra and MK
You're talking about things like Project Artichoke and
Yes.
Rainbow and all those things, right? Okay.
That stuff was a mess. It would never have worked. And if anybody had asked me at the time, if I had been old enough, I was back in high school, I guess, when some of these things were going on. But conceptually, these were completely stupid. And the reason that they were stupid is that all they were trying to do was to get at the conscious level of human thought, that 5%, and mess with it by drugging it or wearing it down, by stress situations, or dosing it with LSD or other chemicals. And that is not how you affect human behavior, because the human behavior angle is down there at the subconscious, which none of that stuff even tried to reach, nor could it. And what Mind War does is to get right at the mechanisms that go into that subconscious level, or what we call SLIPIC, or subconscious involuntary psych-controls. Now I'll give you some examples of these. You have, first of all, the notion that the human body is what do you think your human body is? Just a piece of meat? Well, no, it's an electromagnetic machine. It is completely sensitive to and subject to the electromagnetic spectrum, which means that all of the senses that you have, unless, of course, your head is up your ass, in which case, 5 of them or 4 of the 5 aren't working.
or if you're born with your optic nerve connected to your sphincter muscle, which gives you a pretty crappy outlook on life, I would think.
Yeah. But in any case, you have a number of these influences from the electromagnetic spectrum that are coming into your body all the time, and then you express yourself by operating these into ways that control your personal expressions. So you're basically a large electromagnetic machine. And if you think about it, this is sort of the key to controlling the way that you process information, because if you control the electromagnetic spectrum functions that go into your body, then you pretty much are controlling what's going on once they get inside your body. Take, for example, brain waves. Okay, we are familiar, I think, most of your listeners probably are, with the fact that there are 4 different levels of brain waves that are normally detected, which are alpha, beta, delta, and theta. And these reflect certain levels of your mood and your level of awareness and consciousness. So alpha is very passive and relaxed and very suggestible. Delta reflects sleep. Theta is extremely high emotional, reflective of frustration, some nervousness, and interestingly enough, as the Russians would later discover, ESP phenomena. And beta is what you are in when you are in a state of high concentration and attention. Now, your brain waves are subject to the principle of resonance, which means that if I have a tone generator here, and I switch that thing, say, to alpha, which happens, all of these brain frequencies, by the way, are sub-audio level, so that you couldn't hear them if I switched on such a thing right now. But if I switched on such a device to alpha, and it went over this telephone, and it reached your ears, it would incline your brain to resonate at the frequencies of alpha, meaning that you would be more passive, more friendly, and more susceptible. I can hear your paranoia going up right now. But no, I don't.
It sounds like what they do with television. It's which is the greatest opiate of the masses ever invented.
Television, and this is a great secret of television, is that it is designed and not as deliberately as it could be, but it is designed as a medium to incline your brain to alpha, so that when you watch it, you are passively suggestible, which is why you go out and buy a Coke, after seeing Coke commercials.
Well, or that's why television programs get progressively more violent and more sexual, because those open up the neurotransmitters, and of course your hero is she's hanging from a ledge and she's going to be eaten by a tiger, and suddenly all her clothes fall off, and commercial, buy this car.
Okay. So anyway, if I send an alpha wave to you, your brain will resonate at it, and you will tend to behave and think that way. And if I were to send beta, you would become more alert, more critical, perhaps a little more prickly and a little more antagonistic. So what do we want to do, for example, when we get a bunch of antagonistic people sitting together in a room and they're arguing about something? Well, we blanket them for a start with alpha to get rid of as much of the antagonism as we can, to incline them to be a little bit more friendly and a little bit more cooperative. There are other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, too, that play into this. For example, the electromagnetic system is, of course, a three-dimensional thing, and it functions in terms of frequencies and waves, and also in terms of electrical impulses and magnetic fields. So the researchers at MIT and other institutions found that exposure to certain magnetic fields for the human brain will tend to affect its emotional condition, and indeed even almost blank out at times, depending upon where the magnetic field is directed, parts of your emotional sense of right and wrong. You can see that this is a kind of a spooky idea, because all of us have a moral system that's built up in us, and if you get to the point where you can sort of take a magnetic gun and point it at your temporal lobe and turn it on, and suddenly you are not quite so sure of where right or wrong exists anymore, this could be a dangerous situation. So, however, if you are dealing with people like some of these religious fanatics that we see today, or patriot fanatics, if you want, and you do
or Satanists.
Well, and anybody.
Do have to throw that in there.
Yeah, you could think, well, sure. Although I would have to say that a really good Satanist is a highly self-critical person.
Okay. All right, well, hold on a second. So here's where I think we're working towards, because I want to ask you a couple of questions about music and how it's been used to shape society, about the Tavistock Institute, maybe the Beatles, and whether or not the HARP Project and cell phone towers actually come into what you're talking about. My guest, of course, today is Colonel Dr. Michael Aquino, and we'll be back with it. Gods and angels look down on high at this strange universe in wonder, and we'll be back in a few beats of your heart.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
2014 will be an amazing year of consciousness, revelation, and ascension for us all. Hi, this is Megan Bell. We at Pyridine are here to help you achieve all the goals that you have set for yourself and achieve the happiness and prosperity that you so richly deserve. That is why we are announcing a historic sale on all of our amazing jewelry, specifically the revolutionary Super Receptor Medallion. At Pyridine, we fine-tune the device to your personal frequency, choosing from 24 precious gemstones to bring your body into maximum harmony. Invented by my late contactee father, Dr. Fred Bell, this incredible ET technology is reputed to raise our vibrations, protecting and defending our bodies from the sea of EMF and radiation that we now swim in every day, activating your energy to its ultimate potential. See how this remarkable technology can help you, now at sale prices that you cannot afford to miss. Pyridine.com. Technology from the future for all of us.
A whole new world of power, health and awareness is only a click away. Check out the remarkable devices and systems at Pyridine.com. That's Pyradyne.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons? Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958. And Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world.
An epic story spanning 40 years in the life of Dr. Ted Humphrey and his involvement with time travel, Area 51,
the Dulce Missile,
the Montauk Project,
the Shadow Government,
and Dr. Humphrey's meteoric rise to become head of an all-powerful global organization engaged in a desperate race against time to save our world. At 17, Ted's father, a brilliant government scientist, disappears, and Ted makes it his life's mission to discover his father's fate. This leads to him being drafted into beyond top-secret projects, making the most valuable machine ever built, a device that can move through space and time. As time tech is developed, Ted is taken inside an elite, clandestine group of men dedicated to hiding a deadly truth that forces from beyond the stars could lead to Earth's destruction. Ted gets guidance from people further down and outside the time stream, never knowing who he can trust, while still seeking to solve his father's disappearance. Sands of Time is truly remarkable, a rare look behind the curtain of the black world of super technology, and shows us, once again, that all we have come to accept as reality is wrong.
And now, for the very first time, Sands of Time Volume 1 is now available in paperback for only $25. Read the book that Amazon ranked 5 stars. Also, in ebook and dynamic voice spoken word audio, all at Amazon or StrangeUniverseRadio.com.
Read this book and never be the same.
This is JP from Journeys with JP. You're listening to Revolution Radio. And now back to Sean David Morton with Strange Universe.
Van Halen, welcome back to Strange Universe Radio. This is, of course, Dr. Sean David Morton. I found the simple life ain't so simple when I got out on the road. That's, of course, David Lee Roth and the Pasadena Pistols, my former fraternity house band, Van Halen. We are here, of course, with Dr. Colonel Michael Aquino, and we're talking about his book, Mind War. And specifically, we're talking about all the various frequencies that could be used to actually alter consciousness over forms of mass communication, like radio, like television, alpha states, beta states, delta states, et cetera, that most TV does put you in a... Are you there? Okay. So I went on a little too long there. The devil is definitely in the system today. One way or another, we've had gremlins, I think, all through the... and I think we got their hair wet because we've really pissed them off, so these gremlins. So, okay, now my question becomes, are these, from what you were talking about before, are these mind control systems actually or these mind war systems, if you will, because it very much is a war for the hearts and minds, are they being used through, for example, I know cell phone towers are being put up by, they're being put up mostly by Motorola, but all on military contracts. All of them have something like 1,000 times more power than they're supposed to have. And they all transmit in a 900, I think it's a 900 frequency wave system. Whatever they're doing, it's the signal core, basically, that puts these things up. And whatever they're doing, these cell phone towers actually do have the ability to transmit along frequencies of the human brain. And then, of course, let's talk about HAARP as well, because you've got, right now, you've got a massive polar vortex coming into the lower 48, if you will. And if you look at these guys who track HAARP, they're saying the thing is turned on full blast at a high red 7 or something. And I mean, are all of these, was in your experience in the military? Because it seems like, quite frankly, Michael, I know the psychological operation stuff and the psyops are being used on other countries, but it seems to me like the enemy of the government of the United States is quite very clearly the American people.
Well, let me respond this way. First of all, I gave you before the break just one example, which had to do with brainwave resonance, which you could do very simply even over the telephone or radio if you wanted to. But there are a number of other these. I go through about 12 or 13 of them in the book, which have to do with everything from color perception to spatial perceptions to shape waves to temperatures, atmospheric ionization, and a number of other factors. And some of these are more easily changeable than others. But what you do when you're conducting a mind war campaign is
let me make it clear. You were part of this. Let me make it clear that you were part of this. You were part of the people developing this technology, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh-huh. So anyway, to sort of run to the punchline of your question, is this stuff being used as a package on people in the USA? And the answer is no, for the simple reason that the U.S. government and even private industry is not smart enough to do this yet. And the book is an attempt to sort of preempt them getting into this area in a way that I gave you the example a little earlier of the Manhattan Project, where a bunch of scientists put something together, and then the world, hearing about this and learning about it, tried to figure out what to do with it, and used it, intelligently or savagely, as the case may be, subsequently after they'd set this thing off. So what I'm doing here is a kind of a Manhattan Project for the brain and for the way we construct thoughts. Because if you start getting into the machinery of how people think and why they think as they do, and you can control this, then if you do this ethically, it can be, as I said, a tremendous force for good and peace and generally the uplifting of civilization. If you screw it up, then it can be very nasty. So what we're trying to do here is get it out into the open. This book is a sort of a first shot across the bow of this stuff to say, look, here's how your brain functions, here's why, and how you think as you do. And this also is an argument for the ethical considerations that go into what you should do with this now that you know about it.
So your book is basically talking about the fail-safes of what can be done if, because I'm not so worried about the government as I am about Google as corporations. I'm not kidding. I grew up next to the guy that runs Google, Eric Schmidt. Guy still owes me $20 for mowing his lawn, actually, and he bought my mother's house when she died because he was our next door neighbor. So
I think he can afford the $20 now.
Yeah, I know exactly. What's up with that? So I should just go knock on his door and say, "Where's that $20 you owe me, Eric?" But I just think it's really interesting that this entire empire of evil is literally being run out of my bedroom when I was a kid. But because
you're quite right. You're quite right in this area that there is a major shift of the way that people are thinking that's going on in this, you might call this cyber age or digital age, as it were. And you can see that every time you go around and speak to kids, because the way that they think is being sort of limited to the way that computer systems offer them opportunities to think. And you and I grew up in a much more less digital, more analog kind of an educational process. So a lot of the times, the way that we used to be thinking about things when we were going through high school and college is quite alien to what you see in the kids today. I'm not sure that people have
I don't think it's any better, actually, but it seems like it certainly doesn't seem any better because I don't seem to be getting a lot smarter. But although a 5-year-old child, could figure this out. Get me a 5-year-old child. Your present mind war system of dealing with, and what I do notice is that traditional war has kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, we haven't. I point out we haven't actually fought an army since 2003. We've basically picked on little kids and people throwing rocks and sticks at the United States military. So
they get hurt just as bad, and they wind up just as dead. So to me, it's all the same, a different side of the same problem.
Okay, so all right, then let me. I guess we'll get back to this in just a second. How does this? you hear a lot of. I mean, let me throw some conspiracy theories at you. There was a lot of talk, and because you were a person that was in the shadows at this particular time, there was a great deal of talk about the Tavistock Institute and how the Tavistock Institute was. I mean, the conspiracy theory is that they were writing songs for the Beatles, as an example, and that they were using if you look at the people that the British government pins medals on, like the Beatles as an example, like Jerry Garcia, like the Rolling Stones, so many of these musical figures who were all writing songs about drugs at the time. I know they're on oldie stations and they play them in elevators now, but you can't go an hour without listening to a song about heroin or cocaine or looking at a stamp at the post office that doesn't have. I mean, you've got Janis Joplin died of a drug overdose, Jimi Hendrix, heroin addict. I mean, you can't go throughout your day without these kind of sex and drug kind of references. And I understand that it's very much part of the consumer society to keep you in this amped sort of childlike state so that you buy things. But the question becomes: was there that kind of influence on the 60s and the early 70s through the Beatles and through these big rock groups, through songs written by the Tavistock Institute, in your experience or in your knowledge?
Well, I haven't heard about the Tavistock Institute before, but of course there was a certain amount of hoopla, in the 70s and so on about subliminal messages in rock music or a quote-unquote satanic influence, in rock music. One of my good friends, Paul Kantner, captain of the Jefferson Starship, and I discussed this at some length, and even he was faced with questions about some of the rather lighthearted music that the Starship came up with. He had a dragon, on the cover of one of the albums, and a Christian group was saying, well, this is symbolic of the devil. And he said, no, it's got songs about China, and it's a Chinese dragon. Jeez,
Well, but then you have the Rolling Stones actually putting out an album called their Satanic Majesty's Request with
Our Satanic Majesty's Request, I guess.
Yeah, with a 3-dimensional cover on it and and goat's head soup and.
I don't think that made anyone rush out to join the Church of Satan, because I never saw anybody who came up and said, "Well, I was listening to the Rolling Stones and now I want to sign up." I think that stuff was simply entertainment. I really haven't run into anybody who was conditioned, by rock and roll music to go out and do something malevolent.
Richard Ramirez?
Well, I mean, probably the craziest example you have is Charles Manson's infatuation with the Beatles' White Album.
Right.
The whole Helter Skelter thing. But I think even that was somewhat overplayed, and Manson himself in his own interviews poo-pooed it and said it's ridiculous. It's just Billy Yossi trying to sell a book. And, we enjoyed the music, but it didn't make any decisions for us that way. And, of course, anybody with any brains, knows that a Helter Skelter is just a British name for a roller coaster. So not exactly not exactly a call to violent revolution.
As a psyop officer and a priest of the Temple of Set, which you've described as this ancient Egyptian religion, which practices a form of, I guess you would call it black magic or serpent magic. I mean, does Mind War have any connection with this?
Sure. There are two kinds of real black magic, and what we refer to them as lesser black magic and greater black magic. And lesser black magic.
Give me first your definitions of black magic versus white magic as an example.
Yeah. Okay. Well, magic in general is the use of either ritualized or other subtle means to influence an atmosphere of your own perceptions or other people's perceptions, and therefore, white magic we would call what you'd sometimes refer to as the new agey stuff or the fluffy bunny stuff, where you're dancing in a circle, admiring the moon, and thinking warm, fuzzy thoughts about hugging trees and so on.
Okay.
It's ultimately a kind of peaceful self-deception, and we would also lump conventional religion, quite frankly, into that, because we would say that conventional religion, such as Judeo-Christianity, is a way of taking really scary and disturbing things and reducing them to sort of cartoon platitudes that you can feed people every Sunday or whatever to calm them down so they don't worry about what's going to happen to them when they kick the bucket. So this is all what we would call white magic. It's a sort of a benign self-deception thing. And when you get to black magic, the primary difference is that there's no BS here. We are dealing not with any kind of deception where the operator is concerned, where the magician is concerned, unless it's a specific control measure that has an ethical principle underlying it, as I said before. And this emphasis, I keep hammering on this business of ethics because it's very central to the way that the Temple of Set discusses operational black magic or lesser black magic, just as it is in Mind War. You can't do these things unless you have thought out very carefully an ethical basis for what you're doing, and you can stand up to it, look it in the face, and say, okay, this is a worthwhile, this is a justifiable, this is a good thing. Otherwise, you're a kid with a loaded gun, and you're screwing around, and what you do is going to be random. So in any case, lesser black magic has to do with the use of little understood scientific laws or forces that you apply to a situation to bring it under your control. And therefore, you might, in an odd sort of a way, say that the Mind War book is a kind of a manual of lesser black magic without that name. If you gave it that name, you'd scare more people. By calling it Mind War, you already scare some people, but not in quite the same way. Greater black magic is an investigation into the mysteries of your soul, which enables you to actually find out who and what you personally are, which is not the same thing as the physical meat machine that happens to be your temporary body. So this is a much more metaphysical kind of thing, and it does have to do with questions like immortality, life after death, and the entire notion of where your consciousness resides as what you would call a field, rather than simply a bunch of random electrochemical processes within your physical brain. But this gets, this gets to what we call ego very quickly, which is my eyes glaze over, and I don't want to either bore or scare your listeners by going in that direction. I will also go back to what you were saying a little bit earlier when you were talking about the subject of rock music, and I will point out that most of the rock music beats, if you care to time them, with a watch, you'll find that they are right there in the alpha range, which is why people enjoy going to rock concerts.
It's all mostly 4/4. It's all 4/4 tempo.
Yeah. And it's the same thing that the American Indians used to do when they were beating on, ceremonial drums, or that if you go to a taiko drum concert or something. This is very soothing, it's very satisfying, and it's very relaxing. Your heart also operates at that same level, so as I've often remarked somewhat whimsically to people, if you've got a crying child or infant, or your baby, and you hold it next to your chest so it can hear your heartbeat, you're going to incline its brain to alpha, and it's going to calm down. So there's an electrical aspect to all these things, which, as I said, turn the whole notion that you're in control of your own thoughts into something that's much more of a mechanism, a little bit like you are an automobile mechanic, and you're being given a manual of instructions on how to fix the car rather than just driving it.
Okay. So now our readers of Mind War, are they expected to see and understand the reasoning and the agenda behind it, or are they just expected to trust you?
It's all laid out there as simply as I can make it and as directly as I can make it. As I said, I'm not in the business of using vague words or sort of mystical platitudes that can't be substantiated by hard science. So you're going to see a book with a very intensive bibliography that's all very sound scientific work at the back of it, and you're going to see some very strong arguments that have to do with the nature of the ethics that this plays into. So this is a book that is designed to be readable by anybody with a reasonable amount of intelligence and education, and the whole point of publishing this for the public at the same time that this thing is going around the government, which it is right now, is, again, that we are a society here that is based on the principle, following John Locke and the Founding Fathers, that the people should be sovereign here, and we should pay attention to what our government is doing, keep an eye on it, and push it in the right direction. This sounds a little, I don't want to say hopeless, but I mean, we've certainly, in some circles, would consider that we've taken a battering on this in the recent elections and so on, and that the government is sort of running wild on its own. But
yes.
I'm one of those people, again, Kantner called me a naive idealist, but so help me, I'm that way. I want to keep pushing in the direction of decent, responsible behavior and making the planet a better place. In Mind War, I quote that famous aphorism from William Penn, who said, I'm only going to pass, I'm sort of paraphrasing him here, but he said, I'm only going to pass this way once. So if there's any good that I can do while I'm here, let me do it now and not delay or not do it or shuck it off, because I'm only going to have this one chance. I'm not going to pass this way again. That's what made me write this book. I took basically all the information that I had from all of my years of research into what you might call the mystery of human consciousness, the human equation itself, and everything that I've learned from the field of psychological operations and the ways in which it could be a helpful force. And I've tried to package them all together here into something that is like a big Boy Scout knife, that anybody who reads this thing can kind of pick it up and flip it open and use it to do something sensible and understand why it's working and also what the reasons are that it should be done responsibly.
Well, how soon do you expect to see results? I mean, what happens if Mind War is not implemented as U.S. international foreign policy?
Yeah, well, I'd like to get a phone call from Barack, tomorrow saying, "Boy, this is a great idea." And I'm going to do it.
He's too busy playing golf.
I'm not holding my breath, okay?
Yeah,
what I want to do here is this is a sort of a nudge in the right direction. It's a spark. I want to start people thinking about this and thinking that there is something else besides just beating each other to death, which is all we're doing right now. So I may have kicked the bucket and be long underground, so to speak, by the time that somebody says, hey, that guy had a good idea here, let's try it. But now I'm starting it out. This is sort of jump-starting the thing, pulling the propeller of the airplane to get it spinning. And I think that smarter people than me, with more access to machinery of these things than me, will take it beyond this sort of starting gate version here. This is also the feedback that I've been getting from people who are in the system, who are higher-ranking officials in the government, who have come back to me, and some of them have said, "Boy, this is a great idea, but I don't think we're smart enough to do this."
Well, I guess the biggest question I want to ask anybody who's been in the belly of the beast, so to speak, is that do you consider? There's a lot of conspiracy theory out there, for example, on the web that talks about white hats, black hats. That there's white hats in the military that are very much protecting and defending the Constitution. There's, for example, a lady friend of mine in Canada was pointing out that the Janet Napolitano was carrying the nuclear football when she was in Canada. Because I said, well, why is that? She said, because the military doesn't consider Obama a citizen and they won't trust him with it. And this came from Canadian Secret Service, the lady that had to put all the security together to protect it while it was there. So my question is that are there people inside the government? Are there positive forces inside the government that are actively protecting and defending the Constitution? And of course, then you hear from the crazy end, the David Wilcox of the world, if you will, who talk about how the military might somehow overthrow the civilian government and reestablish the Constitution. Have you met anybody like that inside the government at all?
Well, I enjoyed the movie 7 Days in May like anybody else.
Yes.
However, my experience, I've been in the Army and, of course, had a lot of cross relationships, as you know, from my biography that you went through with all the other services, and also, within the intelligence community with CIA, NSA, the FBI, and, of course, some really fun stuff, when you get into the whole area of space and the National Reconnaissance Office. And
we've only got about 2 minutes left here, so you need to speed it up.
So the answer is that I think that on the whole, this is a very ethical profession, because that's the way it's taught to be, and because when you work with other people in dangerous situations, you cannot really exist in a condition of distrust or of exploitation. You have to deal with them straightforwardly, and it's a habit that gets ingrained in the profession.
From your perspective, is there anything you can tell us about what's coming in the next, say, 24 months?
No, not that I can see. Not that I can see directly resulting from this in the next 24 months. I expect that the book is going to continue to get its message out there. But this is, as I said, a process of osmosis, whereby it's supposed to plant the idea in people's heads that there is a better solution than hitting each other over the club, than killing people and blowing their stuff up. And the more we can push in that direction, then I think the more this book justifies itself.
Okay. Tell people where they can get your book. Promote yourself a little bit, your website, where they can get a hold of you.
Right up there on Amazon, and I believe it's also on Barnes & Noble. Just look for Michael A. Aquino, Aquino, or look for the title Mind War, and you'll see it right there.
Colonel Aquino, I want to say thank you so much. This was a far more pleasant experience than I was expecting, and once I said, there wasn't a single blah throughout the entire thing. So I really appreciate your expertise, and I appreciate you coming on the program today.
I appreciate the invitation, and wish you well.
All right, we hope to have you back sometime soon. Will you come back on the show?
I sure will.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Michael Aquino. Once again, this is Sean David Morton. It's a strange universe, and we just work here. All is one. Life has purpose. God is love, and we will be talking to you soon. Once again, take a look at spiritualcruise.com. Please frequent Pyridine.com. And please go to the Freedom Slips website. We are listener-supported, so this is all based on your donations. And we can certainly use your love. See you tomorrow.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
Listen in on Mondays, 8 Eastern Time on Revolution Radio for Journeys with JP. With a variety of guests, each giving their perspective on their journey into the now. Join me and my guests Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio Studio B.
Every Tuesday evening on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, we present our goddess spiritual warrior, Kathy Bilski.
I command. I call to the architect of the universe's divine creators and ask for permission to quantum leave the world in all life forms on all planes and dimensions, seen and unseen, connected with planet Earth, to let us